Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to do a DCU somewhat brainstormy kind of discussion series video. It's been a little while since I've done one of these. If you aren't aware what they are, essentially it's like one of my discussion series that I've got running on the channel, from that of the Batman to other ones. This is for the DCU, and with, you know, the DCU slowly but surely ramping up, such as recent news of will David Corenswet be Superman, will Rachel Brosnahan be Lois Lane among the other contenders, will Nicholas Hoult be Lex Luthor, or is it Superman, and all kinds of other things. I felt like it's time to go head over heels and answer many of your questions here, many of your ideas. We go back and forth, you guys expand on what I have to say in this video, so I'm going to get through as many as I can. I love doing this series just because there's so much potential in the next 10 years of DC in the movie side of things, so much going on. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope your comment is featured. If not, don't worry, there will be more in the future, and I do tend to talk a lot, so this video will probably be quite long, so sit back, grab a coffee like I have, so I might talk 1,000 words per minute, and I just hope you enjoy, and just don't forget to leave your own contributions as to what we discuss in today's video down in that comment section. Go ahead and like this video if you want to see more videos like this, and do subscribe for more DC news coverage, you know, also breakdowns, speculation videos in the future. So question number one, or comment number one, if you will, is from Gilmer Eric Smith. As a way of keeping Bruce relatively young, do you think they might skip over Tim and have Damian be the first Robin since Jason's death? Personally, love Tim and always surprised he never adopted the Red X persona post-Robin. And I included the reply to this because, you know, I feel like it just expands on it a bit. So Black Air Force One says, I'm a Tim fan myself, and I've been wondering a similar thing. Narrative-wise, Tim probably is the easiest to cut out. I really would like to have all the Robins, but if Bruce is younger than mid to late 30s, it kind of causes some issues. So I chose this question first because Batman, you know, the Brave and the Bold, there's a lot of stuff that we know about it, believe it or not, already, that excites a lot of us, but there's also so much, you know, ambiguity there. And what we do know, first and foremost, is that we're going to have Bruce Wayne obviously come in, and we have Damian enter the scene. We're very familiar with that. So this could be a very heartfelt movie. It could, you know, help Bruce hone in on his somewhat father role that he's had some practice with, for better or for worse. So he may have learned a few techniques there, but now he actually has to play a dad with an actual little ninja killer assassin, Damian Wayne. So I'm actually really hyped for the DCU Batman because there's a lot going on there. But not only that, guys, he has a Bat family, and this is probably one of the largest points of discussion in the DCU and what we've been having on this channel, because obviously in this community we cover a lot of things, but we have a strong Bat family heart. This Bat family can go on into multiple projects, whether that's with Nightwing starting up the Titans, or perhaps he's already leading the Titans in the DCU, and how this can go into Deathstroke and all kinds of things like that. And yes, we've had clues from James Gunn and little teasers about maybe something Deathstroke related happening in the future, but I'm already tangenting here. The big thing about this as well is Batman's age, Bruce Wayne's age. Whenever I've talked about it before, sometimes I have people agreeing with me, but then sometimes I have people saying, well, that doesn't make sense at all, because, you know, if he has all of these Robins, then he'll be in his 40s, so you don't know what you're talking about. When I do explain it, and what I explain is what is being said here, and that is, if Bruce, and this is my gut instinct, is going to be around mid to late 30s, then yes, he can't have necessarily trained every single last Robin up until when Damian Wayne comes in. Because if you didn't know already, I would say super traditionalist-wise canon, Bruce Wayne, the Batman in The Brave and the Bold, when around Damian Wayne enters his life, you know, when he's like, oh crap, you're my son, he's around 43 years old. Now, first and foremost, I want to lay on the ground that I'm not saying that that won't be the case, right? He could actually be in his 40s again. But my gut instinct, going back to what I was saying there, is I roughly think that Bruce will be 38-ish years old. But the thing is, if he's gone from Dick Grayson, right, his first Robin, let's say Batman started at 25-ish, right? He went on to Jason, and then you subsequently go throughout the Robins. Then by the time Damian comes in, yeah, Bruce is usually in his early 40s. But I'm not saying that he won't be, but what I'm saying is I've got a feeling that he might not actually be in his 40s and he'll be around 38. Now, if that happens, yes, that means maybe, just maybe, a Robin maybe just might be skipped over. Now, some of you may from the get-go be like, what? But that's when I want to remind everyone, with adaptations or a new iteration of something, whether that's a new iteration and adaptation with an animated movie, an animated TV show, a live-action TV show on Max, or a live-action movie like The Brave and the Bold, or even Ben Affleck's iteration of Batman in the Snyderverse, or whatever, Nolan's, for crying out loud. We didn't even have a single Robin until basically the very, very end, who was taking up the Batman mantle. My point here being is that adaptations aren't copy and paste, and the joke about that is so many people have said you need a t-shirt with that, because it is so true. But what I say is, when you don't copy and paste with adaptations, fair enough, you don't want to deviate 1,000 miles into the desert away from what is canon. You want to stay true, give some fresh ideas, so you want to innovate, not deviate. I don't think you would be massively deviating to a point of offending fans if you somewhat skipped over one Robin there to make Bruce Wayne a little bit younger. Maybe Tim Drake is still in the future, but it just went about a different way. But he still had Dick Grayson. He still went through the death in the family with Jason Todd. He may have had a bat going between there, but by the time we have Damian Wayne into the picture in The Brave and the Bold, you just might not have had Tim. We're not going to have like a super young Batman, like Superman is rumored to be, fairly young. Not necessarily actually 25, but, late 20s to early 30s. But I don't know if we're going to have a Batman who's in his, around 43, 10 years in the DC, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, 53. Now, that's not remotely me saying the end of the world at all. Like, a Batman who's 43 going on to 53 by year 10 of the DCU, Chapter 2, isn't remotely concerning. I mean, look at Bradley Cooper, for crying out loud. He's 48 and still arguably looks around to be in his late 30s. But anyway, my theory is roughly Batman year 1, as per, somewhat traditionalist canon, is 20. He started at 25 in the DCU, right? But the thing is, when he was training around the world, all of that stuff, I'm sure all of that backstory is going to be in there. His last stop before returning to Gotham, before going into Batman Year 1 at 25, was in Nanda Parbat with the League of Assassins, and that's where he met Ra's al Ghul, whatever way you want to pronounce it, Talia. And sometimes when we're younger, we're a bit stupid, so maybe around 22, 23, heck, maybe even 24 if he was training up with the League right until the last stop, as I said, before going back to Gotham to start Batman Year 1. He didn't realize that he got Talia pregnant, right? That they had a fling out there during his training, as somewhat per how Damian Wayne even comes to be, because he's quite a shock to Batman since he didn't know about him until he was around 12-ish years old, give or take, right? So in his early 20s, when he had a fling with Talia, that happened. Starts Batman Year 1 at 25, and then Year 3 picks up Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson could leave Batman, and in the comics it is around 18, 19, and that's never usually translated into live action, but regardless, he could train Robin for several years, then Jason Todd for a couple of years or so before Jason dies. He actually might already be on the third Robin, or in this DCU case, a Batgirl, maybe Cassandra Cain or Barbara Gordon, and then Damian comes in, because if you think about it, let's just say Damian is around, I don't know, because what we have to remember here is this is the movies, and there's a whole big, can they actually do a young Robin, or can't they do a young Robin in live action debate? I think this could be the first time we ever actually see that go down, because James Gunn is the kind of creative person who can actually make that work with all of his quirky ideas, and I'm not saying a young Robin is quirky, it's just, and I know, again, people have such different opinions about this, but for the majority, I would say most people would lean on the side of having a literal 11, 12-year-old go out as a vigilante crime fighter against people with knives and thugs with guns is a bit hard to sell. However, I do think James Gunn could do that in the kick-ass mode. But it is possible, as per what they usually do in these cases, that when Damian comes in, it might be, for example, in real life, a 16-year-old actor is playing like a 13-year-old, 14-year-old character in the actual movie. So maybe they might actually in-universe age up Damian Wayne a year or two, but he's still arguably, you know, a kid. And in, like, for example, the movie Kick-Ass, where you had Hit Girl, it might come across like that. And that's how the movie might be a bit quirky and fun, but still be very Batman at the same time, because, you know, whether you're reading the comics or watching The Son of Batman or something like that, you literally do have Batman there with Damian Wayne going flipping mental in ninja assassin mode, right? But all of this was kind of about Bruce's age. Will he skip a Robin to kind of obviously keep him a few years younger, around 37, 38, or if they did want to do roughly most of the Robins, he would be around 43 when Damian comes in, and they could still make him around 43 as per the canon. And I don't think too many people would object to that. There was a big misconception going online with regards to everyone thought Superman would be like straight up 25, and then James Gunn said, oh yeah, Batman might be a couple of years older than that, and then everyone was like getting confused, because if Batman is, let's just say, and this is what I mean, it kind of got out of control because James Gunn was being quite loose with his words. If Batman was like a couple of years older, let's just say he was 27, it's like, well, how does Damian Wayne come in if he's like around 12, 13 years old? And Batman's 27 in the DCU. Not gonna happen, right? So we have this thread here. Yeah, but Gunn's words were he was a couple of years older than Superman. See, people take it and run with it. I can't necessarily blame them. Might not exactly be 30, but it's in between it. Not more than that. And that's when James Gunn replied saying, yeah, but people are speculating about both ages. All I ever said was Superman was younger than his 40s, and Batman might be a couple of years older than Superman. So yeah, again, he's kind of being quite broad with what he's saying there, but whenever he's talked about age with regards to Clark Kent, Superman, or Batman, he has put stuff out there, but specifically what he's saying is, all I ever said was Superman was younger than in his 40s. So again, that could mean Superman could be in his 30s, as per some of the people who are auditioning or screen testing or whatever, as per recent news that we've covered. Nicholas Hoult, for example, even though one outlet, a major outlet, is saying, no, he's in the run for Lex Luthor, we have Deadline saying, no, he's actually in the run for Superman, and for example, he's 33 years old. If Batman was maybe a couple of years older, that would make sense, roughly, as per what I'm thinking, he'd be in his mid-30s, even though I think it'd be more like late 30s, 37, 38, but it could be someone like David Corenswet, who is 29. And obviously Batman being a couple of years older than 29 wouldn't exactly work out, because then he'd be 31, and then we go back to the question of, well, how would Damian be like 13, 14 if Batman was only like 31, 32? But I do need to add something in that some of you may be thinking, just because an actor's age is their real life age, that doesn't mean that the character is going to be their real life age. So for example, let's just say Nicholas Hoult did get the role of Superman, and he's 33 in our real world. That doesn't mean Superman is 33. In the universe, in the Superman Legacy, he could be 28, you know? Or David Corenswet is actually 29. By the time it starts filming in January, I don't know when his birthday is, but he could be 30. But Superman, with the way that David Corenswet looks, I'm guessing his actual in-universe age would be like 27, 28, maybe 26 at a push. But then again, I could throw into the mix, if David Corenswet is cast as Superman at 29, 30, that Superman could be 29, 30, because why not? And then you just go back to what he said. All I ever said was Superman was younger than his 40s, and Batman might be a couple of years older than Superman. Bottom line there, I think a couple of years is being used so loosely, because no matter what, with Damian Wayne coming in, unless James Gunn is going to massively change up the Robin chronology of, you know, the order that Batman usually trains them in, there's no way that Damian Wayne's going to come in with Batman in his early 30s. That's why I've always said Batman has got to be 37 and above, and in canon around 43. So one big tangent there, but you know, it goes back to what the question was in the first place, as a way of keeping Bruce relatively young. 43 isn't majorly old. Again, use the Bradley Cooper example. He's 48, does not even look 48, let alone 43. Probably could pull off 37. I'm not even joking, right? So that's the question. Ben Affleck's amazing, don't get me wrong, and he's on the older end, and we could have seen years and years more to come if we were in a parallel world of his Batman, and people would have been happy. I think people just kind of want to see, not necessarily Robert Pattinson's age Batman, but again, the whole idea of a relatively somewhat younger Bruce Wayne, like Matt Reeves' Batman, in this new DCU. And I think that's a bit of a concept in people's minds because we're getting somewhat of a refreshed cinematic universe for the next 10 years. So you want Batman to age throughout those years, I suppose, accordingly, or whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to get into people's minds as to why maybe they want to keep Bruce relatively young. But I do think, after listening to a discussion and me rambling about this for a while, when you're thinking about 37 to 43, which 43 would be the accurate time roughly for Damian Wayne to come in, I don't think people would be mad if somebody was 43 playing Batman. But the thing is, if the character in universe is around 37, even with my theory of, Bruce having a fling with Talia in his early 20s, so 22 to 24, and then started Batman Year One as per usual at 25, they would kind of low-key have to skip over a Robin there to make it work with Damian coming in if Batman is at somewhat of a younger age. And if that happens, I don't think that's the end of the world because, once again, look at any adaptation of Batman, and I don't think we've had one in live action that has ever I'll be embarrassed if I've got this wrong, but I don't think so. Look at Batman vs. Superman. He's only had one Robin, and that was actually Dick Grayson who died. Snyder changed it up between Jason Todd, and it was actually Dick Grayson. Sure, you've had, back in the Batman and Robin days, you've had Batgirl there, and you've had Dick Grayson there. But do you see what I mean? You've never had, the lineup that James Gunn is going to attempt to do. So I think people can somewhat understand if we have a whole Bat family, that maybe if one isn't adapted within the chronology, and that doesn't rule out Tim Drake coming in at some point in the 10-year plan, I don't think it's a huge deal if they wanted Batman, I don't know, not 40, but somewhere in his late 30s. But I'm going to stop rambling about this one because I've been going on about it for a while. But I'm very intrigued into Batman's rough age because, obviously, big Batman fan here and just want to get an idea for where he could be at, especially with regards to what James Gunn has said in the past. So Mikkel up next says, looking forward to the video, as I have no clue what to expect of either Batman or Superman in the DCU. I would love to hear how you imagine their first movies playing out, especially curious about which characters you expect to turn up in either. Well, that's kind of difficult for me to say how do I think the whole of Superman Legacy is going to turn out and Brave and the Bold, so I might cop out a little bit here and give you a bit of a rough answer. In terms of Superman Legacy, there's so much, I could draw out of the air. It's like, this could happen. Will there actually be a bigger villain like Brainiac? I don't know. That's the thing, because a lot of people are debating right now, and man, there's always going to be such a debate with regards to how Superman will be tackled compared to, maybe Henry Cavill's version. We like a more modernized, kick-assy kind of Superman in conjunction with his kindness, but then there's talk of what if Superman in Superman Legacy is a bit more of a movie, whereas there's going to be action, but he could lean more into genuinely, and I'm not going down to the levels of showing a scene where Superman literally saves a cat from a tree. But there's been a lot of, press tour comments from James Gunn recently because, of course, interviewers would, with the opportunity, ask a little bit about it. But he's very excited about showing Superman's kindness. He loves helping people. And I'm not saying here that Henry Cavill, through saying that Henry Cavill didn't like helping people with his Superman. I'm not saying that. Please don't misconstrue anything I'm saying. I'm just saying leaning way into that. Kind of like the Donna Superman days a bit more. Recently, James Gunn said this about recalling seeing Superman the movie and talks a little bit about his Superman here. And he says, at the time, they did exactly what we're doing now. They're going through tons and tons of actors to see who captures that spirit. The thing they don't talk about much when they talk about Christopher Reeve, they talk about his pureness, his hope, his goodness. They talk about, the way that he plays Clark as being so different from the way he plays Superman and how he can turn that on in an instant. But there's this playfulness about Superman when he's saving a cat. He's got that wry smile. And that is one of the best parts of the movie, is the playfulness of Superman. He enjoys what he's doing. He likes helping human beings, and he likes saving them. So, hearing him talk about that, and sure, he's talking about, Christopher Reeve Superman mostly there, but when you kind of read between the lines, you see what he enjoys about the portrayal of Superman a lot. So going back to your question here, like roughly, how do I see the Superman movie playing out, Superman Legacy, is that we saw Henry Cavill save people, and again, I'm not saying we didn't see examples of this, but I do think James Gunn is going to truly show a Superman with the best of both worlds, the action, as I have mentioned, this, that, and the other, but really just seeing Superman being in love with humanity. And this movie will be hitting the ground running. Superman's been active for a couple of years already or so. He's still young. I don't think he would have fought Bizarro, this person, that person, or the other. Maybe he's not even fully run into a mech-suited Lex yet. Like, he's in the infancy. He's been saving bridge collapses, flash floodings, this, that, and the other. Maybe a metahuman or two, of course. Maybe a supervillain, because this is a world in where superheroes and supervillains exist and have existed, as James Gunn says. But what we will see at the same time, as well as maybe a day in the life of saving people with regards to supervillains or whatever in the movie, I do think we'll see some typical Superman tasks. And, some people may be like, oh, but I don't want to, I can't be asked to see the goofy Superman. Well, fair enough if that's your, taste, but I do think that's actually intrinsic to Superman, and again, what James Gunn says there, he likes helping human beings and he likes saving them. He enjoys what he's doing. I would love to see David Corenswet, if he ends up being casted, fly throughout the air with a big smile on his face, or as he's saving someone, he has a conversation with them and there's a big grin, and then he takes off again. People or heroes in the DC universe, whether you're Green Arrow to whomever, Black Canary or whatever, they save people, but they might disappear. Sure, I'm not saying there aren't moments where you get a bit of personality or the hero interacting with the public, but Superman is the one who actually is there, no domino mask or anything, which is the funny thing, right, about he kind of looks like Clark Kent, but he's there, full face shown. And there's, I want to see scenes, and this is definitely what James Gunn is like, where he is just, living and breathing, hey, I love helping people, and we're going to get that. And I think that will show the spirit, the metal to Superman, that showcases who he truly is, but also, most importantly as well, not taking away from all of the other cool aspects of Superman that you want to see in the movie, and how, don't forget, he is the literal Superman and a very, 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 very powerful being at the same time, and we need to see some of that demonstrated in the movie as well. So with all of that being said, really bringing out the kindness, the heart, the humanity-loving Superman that he is. We're going to have him as a reporter because he is a reporter. He will know the characters already, like Jimmy and whatnot. The one thing we don't know is he actually in a relationship with Lois or not at this point? It would be pretty cool, since we're already, again, as I always say with this DC universe, we're hitting the ground running. This isn't like a straight-up origin for every single character. Like, we're hitting the ground running with Superman Legacy, as I have mentioned. He's already been out there, right? So it'd be pretty cool, and I actually would like it if Lois is already his girlfriend, or they've only started dating like 2 or 3 months before the movie even picks up. So we eventually still get that reveal. But again, with where we're at with a younger Superman who is a reporter in the Daily Planet, and everything else I've mentioned about his Superman activities, I feel like all of that sounds like a really nice Superman movie. But I know there's going to be some people out there who find all of what I just said trivial Superman, or like classic cheesy Superman. I want to see face melting punches with Brainiac, this and the other. I'm not saying I don't want to see that too, but I do think you can decorate this Superman Christmas tree or this Superman cake with something that, feels like we haven't concentrated on a lot in recent Superman takes, but also gives you the best of the 2020s level action we can put into these big blockbuster movies without it going full on, 1970s Superman. Now, as for what characters could turn up, with regards to this hitting the ground running, this movie and the DC universe, there is a lot of rumors out there right now that we will see other DC characters be featured in it, not necessarily for big amounts of screen time distracting from the Superman movie itself or the storyline that's going on. It's just, this is a world, as per what James Gunn has said and what I've already said in this question, that has had superheroes exist and existed for a while. So it would be pretty cool, because there's rumors right now that Mr. Terrific could turn up in the movie. And we've seen James Gunn, and this is something I've kept my eyes on. He's teased Mr. Terrific ever since he came in with Peter Safran in September, November last year, like several times. And we're like, well, is this a Max TV series? Is it something else? Is it a Mr. Terrific movie? Like, what's going on there? And the whole time, it could have just been that he might be a cool part of the movie, or like a cameo. And then there's that moment recently with regards to the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline articles about David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan, and other contenders for Lois Lane and Clark Kent, and Lex Luthor, saying, for all of you asking, I would never comment on who is or who isn't auditioning for a role. That's the actor's business only, but etc., etc. He goes on, for now, only one person has been cast in Superman Legacy, and it isn't any of the regular players in the Superman world. And now people are looking into this. I didn't realize this when I read this out in my news roundup video. It completely skipped my mind. But he left a little merman emoji there. And I agreed with those people who might be saying right now, don't read that far into it, Boba. But the more I've thought about it, after initially being like, nah, surely not, I could imagine it. Now, that merman emoji is in Peacemaker. It is 100%. I mean, again, this could be the reading into it thing. It might not reference Peacemaker, but I don't think James Gunn would leave that merman emoji there, little mermaid emoji, whatever you want to call it, unless it wasn't a reference to Vigilante from Peacemaker. That's the only connection that has. And some of you may be like, what? Peacemaker's Vigilante being in Superman Legacy? Now, again, hold your horses. This could be something so simple, because where he says for now only one person has been cast in Superman Legacy, and it isn't any of the regular players in the Superman world, we could just have like a moment again in the day in the life of with Superman, and where Vigilante is just causing a mess. Technically, Vigilante and Peacemaker and Viola Davis's, Amanda Waller and whatnot, they're carrying over into the new DCU. Waller is the Peacemaker season 1.5 until we get Peacemaker season 2. As James Gunn said, Peacemaker season 2 is on the back burner because, lo and behold, I have a whole fat Superman Legacy project to deal with now. But don't worry, you're going to get Peacemaker 1.5 with Waller. He could be like, I don't know, flying up Vigilante because he's caused a ruckus with Peacemaker or something like that. And I don't know, there could be a little interaction there. Now, I've got a feeling a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction to that will be like, what? I don't like the idea of that. Even though a lot of people, including myself, were pleasantly surprised and loved Peacemaker. It's really good. It's got James Gunn's comedy there, but mixed with the emotion. I couldn't believe it. It's typical James Gunn recipe. So I think, given how good Peacemaker was, Vigilante, if he is appearing, and yes, we're basing this off one emoji, could be in Superman Legacy, and it could just be the world-building thing, right? Again, like Vigilante, even though he did technically save the world with Peacemaker, could get in a bit of trouble, and you might have a, I don't know, minute, 15-second scene with him interacting with him and just, I don't know, flying him away from whatever the heck Vigilante is doing. Because don't forget, Superman hears a lot with his super hearing, and he might hear one thing where Vigilante's causing a ruckus, flies down, and you might just get a little bit of it. Don't forget, this is James Gunn. I don't think Superman Legacy is going to be injected with so much comedy. In fact, I think it's going to lean on the best of heart that he's had from that of the Guardians or whatever, even Peacemaker stuff that he's done. But I can imagine some quirky moments where you have Vigilante just like, oh, and then you have Superman like arrive and he's like, so something like that. I could be wrong, and I'm not saying Vigilante will be a huge part of the plot. I'm really not. It's just it could be a tiny, tiny, tiny scene that, again, is a bit of exposition for this larger DC universe. And man, I've been speaking so much about the Superman stuff with Mikkel's comment here. I haven't even got onto Batman Brave and the Bold and how I would imagine that movie playing out. I mean, obviously, similar to Son of Batman in a way, like, you know, with Bruce learning a bit more about being a father, also teaching Damian to not be such a killer. But, you know, it's kind of like almost maybe not as, you know, plain as saying the Batman's from vengeance to hope or anything like that. But with Bruce's experience, I think it will be this. I think if it's true that Andy Muschietti could be directing this film, it will be a very, very, very heartfelt Batman film where you can still include all of the Batman isms of it, but with a bit of a older Batman getting a kind of perspective on like, oh, now I've actually got a son. And, you know, obviously with the way the movie plays out, we've still got so much more information to learn here. Who are the villains? Could it be the League of Assassins? Could Ra's al Ghul want to come in? Could Talia be somehow involved in that? Even though I don't think she'd be like mega villainous there, I think if anything there would just be a bit of a liaising between her and Bruce about Damian, because Damian, I think, will run away from the League because he would have heard about his father for his whole life. Maybe Talia drops him off, but I think maybe him running away to Gotham and be like, hey, hi, Dad, will lead Ra's and maybe Talia to come over. But the larger things that I'm looking forward to see play out in the movie outside of that is the Bat family, Nightwing. Are the Titans already operating? Is the Titans going to start at some point in the future and hasn't necessarily started yet because Dick Grayson, or while he may have left the Robin role, has only been Nightwing for X amount of time and hasn't necessarily started up a team yet. But I do low-key expect massive signals for a Titans team up in the future. But regardless, guys, I've been going on about this one for so long, so let me know your thoughts there. So up next from Random Pat, he asks, do you think the first chapter of the DCU will culminate in a New Frontier-inspired story where all the heroes join together to fight the Center, thus leading to a fully formed Justice League? I think Gunn teased the Center before, and those seeds could be planted as early as the Lanterns TV series. So I don't think, and I feel like I would know about this, there's ever been like a deliberate reference to the Center being the team-up villain, or like what is this overarching threat of the DCU. However, when we have looked into it as like a fandom, the Center is like a decent direction to go towards. From the tease of the Lanterns Max series that we're getting, James Gunn did say that they stumble across an ancient, terrifying mystery that ties into their larger storytelling aspect of the whole DCU, which I think sounds great because, you know, we've got the universe reset, as you're seeing in this photo here, Blue Beetle, Aquaman, you've got Creature Commandos, Waller, then Superman Legacy, but then you got Lanterns after that. And this is assuming they're all releasing in this order, and I believe they are. You know, Superman Legacy marks July 2025. Then you've got the Max, you know, live action series. And if they do stumble across this ancient, terrifying mystery, granted it could be about something totally unrelated and just Lanterns related, but I do think it'd be good to set the seeds as per like your typical cinematic universe stuff. As I've referenced before, back in the early days of the MCU, you had the teasers of the Infinity Stones, you had the teasers of Thanos, but it still took movie after movie after movie after movie to get to somewhere significant, to the next block of clues. So Lanterns might not be like, okay, we've introduced the Center now, right, from here on out in the Authority is the Center's threat. No, but it may very well tease, as per what you're saying here, the seeds of the Center. The Lanterns are concerned about it, and as we go throughout the Authority, as we go throughout Paradise Lost, Batman Brave and the Bold, Booster Gold, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Swamp Thing, you get more every now and again additional seeds that eventually blossom out into an actual bigger thread that all of the characters realize, and yes, eventually team up into a bit of a Justice League New Frontier-esque story here. And I do think the Center is like a somewhat decent place to start there, because obviously you're not going to do Darkseid after Snyder was going to do Darkseid like right away. I mean, who knows, one day kind of thing. I know some people would be like, oh, but I prefer Brainiac over the Center. You know, I know he's more of a Superman thing, but he's such a threat sometimes that it would require all of the Justice League to go up against him. I get that, but the Center can be really cool as well. And I believe actually where people were starting to think that the Center could be like this overarching threat that gets initially teased early on, is because I believe that Creature Commandos, a large majority of it will be set on this mysterious island, which is Dinosaur Island. And that would be pretty cool because they realize that this island is actually sentient, or is alive. And that actually pertains to, obviously, what the threat of the center is. And if you introduce that in Creature Commandos, unless that somehow the Creature Commandos manage to stop that threat within their own show, I don't know about that. It does seem like it would be more of a problematic thing, like in New Frontiers, for example. That could be a good seed that they stumble across it. Maybe the Lanterns stumble across that as well, unless the ancient terrifying mystery is something else related. Again, I don't know. But I think that's where all of this discussion came from. Essentially, this huge kind of kaiju-esque villain, which is very true to what James Gunn has done in the past and what he's very interested in. Look at Starro. Look at Guardians of the Galaxy with a freaking giant planet. The question is, I just wonder, since Creature Commandos is an animation and you can do so much with animation, like even something like the center, and have this group of characters maybe take that on, will it be exclusive to that show? It's very possible it could be, even though we're thinking, and it can be, a Justice League level threat, but it might not be. It could be a really, really, really badass way for the Creature Commandos to handle something, and actually it might not go beyond the Creature Commandos animation, even though it will be canon within the DCU, and we will have some of those characters, well, all of them eventually go into the DCU, and I believe it's been reported that one of them will be featured in Waller, which comes after the Creature Commandos animation. I just don't know if it's going to bleed over into an actual DCU, Chapter 1, culminating the events of Chapter 1 level threat, and it could just, I know I keep saying it, be exclusive to Creature Commandos, which if it is, well then, yeah, truly, we have no idea what the overarching threat could be that leads to a Justice League level threat team up. Maybe, as I said, the Lanterns and what they find or what they come across, this ancient terrifying mystery, might be completely unrelated, even though it kind of sounds like the center, could be completely unrelated, and that's what bands them together, or at least plants the initial seeds to what leads to people teaming up in the future of the DCU. So Saeed Rahman asks, what do you want and think the DCU's main original lineup for Justice League will be, and who do you think the main villain of the movie will be? My hope is that the first Justice League appearance in the comics brought to screen. So with this, at least from the lineup that we've got, there isn't really a Justice League movie in the next few years. Don't forget, we've got Creature Commandos likely coming out next year, as well as Waller, going into Superman Legacy 2025, Lanterns after that, The Authority is another movie, Paradise Lost is a live-action series, then we get another movie, Brave and the Bold, then Booster Gold, another Max series, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, another film, and then Swamp Thing, another film, and there's still like no Justice League, and that's, by the way, easily going up to 2027 and beyond. So for the next several years, and don't get me wrong, like we still got like 2 years until the first DCU movie. It's still a while away, and that is Superman Legacy. So when we're at that point, for all we know, we're going to have a lot more of the road, at least Chapter 1, because don't forget, something I forgot to mention is this Chapter 1, these announcements that we've got here, we've still, as James Gunn said, have more announcements for Chapter 1 before we even get to Chapter 2. So yeah, it is totally possible that Chapter 1 could end in a Justice League film as well that gets announced sometime later before we go on to Chapter 2. And Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 span a 10-year time period, right? Similar to like the first Marvel movie and then like Endgame. As for like the main villain, I'm not entirely sure. As per kind of what we just went over, it could be, we've already somewhat entertained how it could be centered, but maybe not, and how that could be exclusive to and resolved even in the Creature Commando series. And that could be quite a cool threat for like that band of characters to tackle, even though again some people might be like, but really, like the Justice League struggle taking them down, how are the Creature Commandos going to? So yeah, maybe it could bleed out into that threat being a bigger thing, but obviously it could be an even huger threat, because at this point we would have gone through Superman Legacy, we would have gone through and found out what the Lanterns have stumbled across, this ancient, terrifying mystery. The Authority would have come in, and they could be, as I've said, like the reverse Kingdom Come situation, but in present day, instead of being in the future where you have all these new age heroes or anti-heroes, if you will, having no example to be led by, kind of just doing hero things by any means necessary. That could be a threat that bleeds throughout, and then you eventually get Batman Brave and the Bold, you get Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Swamp Thing. I imagine after Swamp Thing, there's going to be another movie which kind of introduces, the next potential big thing, like the next big seed that will eventually lead into a Justice League level threat. So as for what that actual movie villain could be, it's so hard to imagine. Maybe you've still got a fallout from the Authority there, and you have like the Justice League eventually being established, and they will be like the new example to heroes, similar to Kingdom Come, from that of what was initially bred the Authority to come to be, because they've you've got heroes out there like Batman's been active for a while, Superman's been active for a while, but we don't really know the status of the Justice League at this point in time. And if they're not united, for example, by the time the Brave and the Bold is around, or even Superman Legacy, then you do have a lot of metahumans out there, a lot of heroes, a lot of vigilantes, not really looking up to the way things are being done properly and maybe by the book, as per what the Justice League usually handle things with, or like this code of conduct, right? Now, I do imagine that the Justice League might be set up in some way already, not properly, but around the time of Superman Legacy, or at least by Batman Brave and the Bold. I think that you might not have a full Justice League roster or lineup, but you at least have the Trinity being familiar with one another. Because again, Superman's been around for a few years. I'd like to think that maybe he's run into Batman. I'd like to think that Diana, Wonder Woman, is out there. And maybe, because I don't think, and again, we're hitting the ground running. I don't think, Diane has clearly been around for a long time. Batman's been training Robins for a hot minute now because Damian Wayne's coming in. Superman's been active saving big world events that Batman couldn't exactly grapple up a bridge together. Do you know what I mean? So I do think that maybe the Trinity have come across each other's paths, and then eventually, they recruit other heroes. I could be wrong about that, and you could have heroes like the Flash in there, or Green Lantern, and it might not be just the Trinity, by the way. To be fair, they might also know the Lanterns like Hal Jordan and John Stewart, because those are the two main characters of the Lantern series. But you might not have like a fully fledged league right now, and that might come more down the line. But I do like the idea of, since we're hitting the ground running in several ways with several characters in this universe, that you're already going to have a little kind of, let's have like a little group so we're ready for something big. Like the main players will know each other, but maybe, yes, some get recruited along the way. But as for that lineup, I personally like the typical one. You have Cyborg in there, you have Superman, you have Batman, the Trinity, right? Wonder Woman, of course, the Flash, but I'm still so, what is going on there? Will Ezra Miller be that character in the new DCU? I really don't know. Like, for all we know, if James Gunn decides to dip away from that, maybe we don't get a new Flash for a while. But, I know James Gunn's a huge fan of the Green Arrow. Now, right now, on this lineup, there is nothing Green Arrow related. But please, with the projects that are yet to be announced, to even finish off Chapter 1 before we get to Chapter 2, like there's, apparently this is less than half of the projects of what is still yet to complete Chapter 1. So everything, Creature Commandos, Waller, Superman Legacy, Lanterns, The Authority, Paradise Lost, Batman Brave and the Bold, Booster Gold, Supergirl, Swamp Thing. We've still got another 10 plus projects to be announced to finish off Chapter 1. Hopefully, one of those is Green Arrow, and I would love Green Arrow to be in the Justice League lineup. Who knows what else is in that future? Are we going to get like a Martian Manhunter kind of thing? I really don't know. Is Aquaman going to be a part of that? Will that be Jason Momoa? Or, despite everything we're hearing, will he be playing a different role, but yet still maybe Aquaman? I don't know, because despite how many of us have conviction in saying, well, Jason's clearly said Aquaman isn't going anywhere. He's had the secret DC meetings where he's so excited. He's literally gone on record to say, I can play other characters too. I can be savage. I can be charming. I can be funny and play other characters too. in that same sentence. So interesting. Some people think that the Savage could be a clue to, even though people like to think he could play Lobo, some people are like, what if Vandal Savage could be a main threat? And I'm not going to lie, that would be sick. I would personally love that, because that is a very, very, very powerful threat that would require a lineup like this to deal with it. No matter what, though, I don't know if we're getting too far ahead of ourselves just in terms of Justice League level talk, because no matter what, as I observe this, you've got these 10 projects here that take us easily by Swamp Thing around 2027 or so. Yes, after we get a sneak peek at the next 10 plus projects to complete Chapter 1, you would expect some kind of World's Finest announcement at the very least, or maybe a Justice League level project. It's just that this is so many years away. We're talking like 2028, 2029, 2030 before we get into that potentially. So, we've got a lot of, even though we're hitting the ground running with this world, heroes have existed, they still exist, villains too. We've still got a lot of exposition to build up there, a universe to construct and compose, and lay the seeds down, whether that's through the Lantern series for threats, this, that, and the other, Supergirl arriving to town, or is already out there, but maybe getting into a backstory. So yeah, I would love to know your ideas for, I suppose, your Justice League lineup, how that will unfold with the ways we've discussed, but what could be that Justice League level threat that they face. So up next from Morgie39, she asks, Gunn said that Elseworlds projects would be clearly labeled as such. That is true. Do you think the DCU projects will have a consistent opening credit sequence like the MCU to set them apart from the Elseworlds projects? That is for sure. He's actually commented on this before. This was quite a while ago. Somebody asked, James, now that we have DC Studios and you are leaning towards a new start, any chance we will revisit the DC intro before the movies? It seems a bit fast-stitched by the previous team, maybe something more epic. And he said it will be something different, but that's down the line a bit, which makes sense because we've still got Blue Beetle that will use the old DCEU intro. Actually, maybe it shouldn't, because it does come after the Flash reset, if you think about it. But then we've got Aquaman, but I think technically the first proper DC intro, the new one for the DCU, will happen at the beginning of Superman Legacy. So yeah, instead of that animation that you're seeing on screen right now, we're going to have a whole new one that says DC Studios. We might have a little mock-up before then, because we do have Creature Commandos, we do have Waller, which is a live-action series, and since they are very much so in the DCU, and even though we know that Blue Beetle takes place technically after the Flash reset, chronologically it is after the Flash reset, it is somewhat of a prelude to the DCU. Those should have it in a way. I certainly expect something saying DC Studios at the very least in front of Creature Commandos and Waller. But as for like a proper full-on majestic kind of cool animation akin to that of like Marvel or like what we had for the previous DCEU movies, that I believe will begin at the beginning of Superman Legacy. But either way, as James Gunn says, it will be something different, but that's down the line a bit. Up next from Gustavo Clarindo, he says, do you think James Gunn might direct another one of the announced projects, or will he only be directing Superman and its possible sequels? That's a very interesting question. I really don't know. I think, as per what you said there, if James Gunn is directing, well, as we know, he's written and he is directing Superman Legacy, I have no doubt that I can't imagine him in a subsequent Superman movie just giving the keys off to someone else, which makes me wonder if and as of when we get even a bigger movie, maybe like, let's just say World's Finest, so maybe not Order Justice League, or maybe, yeah, if we get a Justice League movie, it makes me think, will we have James Gunn direct that as well to kind of handle all of those characters? That's possible as well. I could be wrong about that, but most certainly, as you said, anything Superman related after directing the first movie, I don't think he will give those keys away. I do think, as per what we know, he will be directing Peacemaker Season 2, but he's a very busy guy. I'm even impressed and surprised that he's directing Superman Legacy. I mean, I'm not surprised in terms of when we found out he was writing it, there was no way he wasn't going to direct it. It's just what I mean on the larger scale of things is that he's got the Kevin Feige-esque job and he's also finding time to direct on top of all of this pressure for everything else. So as for one of the other projects we already have out there, I believe The Authority is rumored to have a director already. James Mangold is supposedly meant to be directing Swamp Thing. It's possible if he's directing Superman, maybe he might want to direct Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I don't know. It's anyone's guess. If he can clearly handle directing a movie like Superman Legacy on top of being, the curator, if you will, on the creative side of the DCU, then maybe he could handle another project somewhere down the line. But maybe after handling the responsibility of that on top of Superman Legacy, he might think, oh man, I don't think I've ever been so stressed in my life, so I will just stay to the kind of Feige-esque role and maybe not direct as much outside of the Peacemaker Season 2 Max TV series, if you will. But it's anyone's guess, really. I've got a feeling he will at some point, but it might not be until one of the unannounced 10-plus projects we have that we'll be getting sometime in the future that finishes off Chapter 1, and then God knows what in Chapter 2. But I'd love to know your guys' thoughts there as well. Do you think James Gunn will direct another one of the projects, whether it's one of the ones that has been announced or unannounced? Let me know. So up next, Zach Briggs asks, perhaps you've addressed this before, but what type of musical score do you hope for in Superman Legacy? I'm wishing for more of a traditional symphonic score, a tune we can leave the theater whistling to for decades to come. This is a really hard question for me to answer because honestly, I feel the same way. I really do. I love the John Williams theme. I was listening to it actually before making this video to kind of, get in the mood a little bit. There's nothing that kind of beats the da 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 da. There's something about that Superman theme that is so awe-striking. It's majestic. It really, really kind of embellishes the old kind of movie approach. John Williams, anyway, in of himself, absolute freaking mastermind. But there's something so Superman in that, right? But of course, with the Man of Steel Hans Zimmer theme, didn't really have any of the John Williams-y kind of orchestral. I mean, of course, it does, but it doesn't have that same approach. Yet there's something so deeply moving about the piano. It's like dun 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 dun. Like I'm getting goosebumps as I even did my own notes there. There's something so good about what Zack Snyder managed to get there with Hans Zimmer's Man of Steel theme. And as it goes on to the dun 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 dun, it's so good. It reimagined it. It's fantastic. So this might be a bit of a cop-out answer, but if they can in some way, somehow, and James Gunn, as he's already says, this was a little while back, but he's already giving a call to the composer of Superman Legacy, so he knows full well who it is. If they can somehow get those two scores, both those soundtracks, make a baby, I will be very happy. Because don't get me wrong, Zack Snyder and Hans Zimmer reimagined it. Like, truly, each theme have so many of their own unique merits that are so inherently Superman. I can't deny that. But if they could truly marry them together with the old orchestral aspects, like the kind of aspiring feeling you get. And it's weird, I hate kind of explaining this, because when I say that about the John Williams theme, it's not like the Hans Zimmer theme doesn't have that. I'm not saying as I list these qualities that the other one doesn't have it, but it's just hard for me to isolate the descriptions for each one without sounding like the other one is being abandoned. No, but you know what I mean about the John Williams theme. But then you have that kind of modernized, kind of deep, Hans Zimmer always with his music, it gets so moving on a really emotional level, and so does John Williams, but there's something about the incorporation of piano there, the way it builds up, the kind of melancholy yet almost introspective soundtrack at the beginning of that piano weaving up into something more grand and majestic. Yet with the Williams one, you have something, soaring from the beginning. Or you have technically the low-key beginning, like bum, 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 bum. It's more traditional heroic in that sense, right from the get-go. So again, there are clear differences there, but if they can marry them together, something that is emotional, that incorporates yet also the John Williams, very blatant, heroic themes that almost get you right off the bat, yet still incorporate that moving, signature mark of Hans Zimmer. I need that both together. I would probably say and agree with you, Zach, here, that I would want maybe a little bit, a teeny, and when I say just a little bit more of an edge on this side, I mean just a little bit more, because I don't want to abandon what the new mood was with Hans Zimmer. But if we could get maybe a little bit more leaning on, as you say, the traditional symphony-esque vibe of it, like we had with John Williams, but also very much so blend in the Hans Zimmer mood. Again, it's not like they're going to rip Hans Zimmer, but you see what I mean. Something that they achieved there with the Man of Steel theme. I think that would be... It would just be mind-melting, mind-blowing. But I'll tell you what, though. I do feel like the Batman with Matt Reeves, and it always comes back to the Batman here, they managed to go, it's kind of what I'm explaining here. They managed to marry the old with the new so good. Honestly, with the soundtrack, because you have the typical dun 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 dun, but you know, as that goes throughout with Michael Giacchino's theme, he incorporates like bloody 60s like Adam West aspects to it. Like listen to the Bat and the Rafters Part 2. You have like the deep bump 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 bump, but then you have the boop, 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 you know, like the almost like the trumpety kind of that happens, like, and then the, you know, the kind of like almost you expect two little flags saying bang and bang on it happening, but it's so, you know, woven, the synergy between the old and the new so well. If they can do that with what Giacchino did with Batman, classic and modern, but with Superman, John Williams and modern, with Zimmer, you got it right there. And my honest example there would be, seriously, Matt Reeves's or Giacchino's The Batman soundtrack. That should give you an essence of what I mean by marrying both the old and the new. But guys, I think I'm going to end it there. Once again, I'm somewhat disappointed with myself for speaking so long on particular questions, because there's so many others as I go throughout my arrow keys here. There's so many other questions that I wanted to get to. But if you liked this video and you enjoyed it enough, honestly, let me know by leaving a like on it, especially if you got to this point in the video. Leave a like, because I will expedite the next episode in this, and we'll get more deep into the DCU. But I think that was a thoroughly enjoyable discussion that I just had right there. I hope you guys agree. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say about what I discussed here. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, or just simply can expand on something that was so in front of my nose, but I didn't even speak about myself. So I read every single comment. Got to be reading yours down in that comment section. Please leave your support by hitting that like button, as I said. Subscribe if you're brand new, or if you've been watching me and you're recommended for a while and you found yourself here right now, you may as well subscribe. But I think that is everything, so I'm going to love you and leave you guys. Thank you again for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the new DCU in the next video. Goodbye.